People ask me how I stay so calm. They ask it at gatherings. They ask it in my kitchen. And lately they ask it under these videos. Nothing seems to bother you, old man. The rude comment, the bad news, the disrespect, the delay, the criticism, it all seems to pass through you like wind through a doorway. What is your secret? And tonight I am going to answer that question completely, and I am going to begin with a confession that will surprise the people who only met me in these last decades. I was not always this way. Hear that clearly, because it is the most important sentence in this whole teaching. The calm you see was not given to me. I was not born with still water in my chest. For the first half of my life, I was bothered by everything. I want you to know exactly who is talking to you tonight. I was the man who replayed an insult for a week. I was the man whose whole evening could be taken by one comment at the dinner table, whose knuckles went white on the steering wheel over strangers, who rehearsed comebacks in the shower for arguments that were already over, who could be handed a beautiful day and have it stolen by a single sentence from a person whose opinion, I now understand, was worth nothing. Bothered was my natural condition, and I am 70 years old now, and I can tell you honestly, before the Creator and this camera, that almost nothing reaches me anymore, not because I went numb. Numb is the cheap version, and I will warn you about it before we finish. I feel more at 70 than I felt at 40, and I am bothered by almost none of it. Tonight I will tell you exactly how I got from there to here, the 3 understandings that carried me, in the order they came, because this road has an order, and you can start walking it tomorrow morning. The first understanding came to me from my grandfather, and it came as an insult, which is fitting. I was a young man, furious about something a neighbor had said about me, pacing my grandfather's yard like a penned dog, telling him the whole story, what was said, who heard it, what I was going to do about it. And my grandfather listened the way he listened, wholly and without hurry. And when I finished, he asked me one question. He said, "When the neighbor said this thing, did he reach into your chest?" I said, "What?" He said, "His words. Did they enter your body on their own? Did they climb into your chest by their own strength and light this fire I am watching?" And I said, "Of course not. They are words." And he nodded slowly, the way he did when a trap had closed, and he said, "So the words arrived at your ear, and then someone carried them from your ear into your chest, and fed them, and fanned them, and has kept them burning, now you say, for 3 days. Who did the carrying, grandson?" And I stood there in that yard with my mouth open because I was 20-some years old and no one had ever shown me the machinery before. The neighbor made a sound in the air. That was the entirety of his power, a sound in the air, finished in 2 seconds. Everything after that, the carrying, the replaying, the burning, the 3 ruined days, all of it was my labor. I was not the victim of that fire. I was its fuel, its keeper, and its bellows. My grandfather put it in the sentence I have now carried for 50 years. He said, "No one can bother you, grandson. They can only invite you to bother yourself. Every insult, every slight, every provocation is an invitation." And the whole first half of my transformation was learning that one strange, freeing truth. I had been accepting every invitation for 30 years, every single one. The rude stranger invited me, I attended. The critical relative invited me, I attended in my best clothes and stayed late. Learning to see the invitation, just to see it, there it is, an invitation to be bothered, was the beginning of everything. Because a man who sees the invitation can, for the first time in his life, decline it. Now I will be honest with you about what came next, because the teachings that skip this part are lying to you. Seeing the invitation did not make me calm, not for years. What it did first was embarrass me, which is its own medicine. I would take the bait, burn my evening on some fool's comment, and then, lying in bed, I would see it, too late, the invitation, accept it again, attend it again, and I would groan at myself in the dark. And that was progress. Hear me. That groan was progress, because before my grandfather's yard I did not even know there had been a choice. Then, slowly, the seeing moved earlier. I began to catch the invitation while the fire was still small, an hour in, and could sometimes put it down half-burned. Then I began to catch it in the first minutes. And then came the day, and I remember it. I was past 40 when a man insulted me to my face, and I watched the invitation extend toward me, saw it clear as a handed envelope, and I simply quietly did not take it. I said something mild and went back to my work, and the man stood there holding his own insult with nowhere to put it. And I want to tell you what I felt in my chest in that moment, because it is the feeling this whole road leads to. Not victory, not superiority, stillness. The fire never lit. The evening stayed mine. He kept his storm because it was his, it had always been his, and for the first time in my life I did not volunteer to host it. 30 years of hosting other people's storms, and I had finally left one out in the weather where it belonged. If you take nothing else from tonight, take this. The seeing comes first, the declining comes slowly, and every single declined invitation makes the next one easier to decline. It is a muscle. Nobody is born with it. I built mine one refused envelope at a time, and so will you. Before I share the next teaching, I need to tell you something. I'm not going to be here forever, and most of what I know was never written anywhere. So I sat down and I wrote it, all of it, 20 teachings, 4 parts, in the order they were meant to be received, the ones about declining the invitations that used to run my life, the ones about the stillness that took me 30 years to find so it can take you 3, the ones I have never said on camera. It is called The Native Way, and it costs less than one dinner you will not remember. Scan the code on your screen or look in the comments, but do not leave yet. Because seeing the invitation is only the beginning, and the second understanding is the one that actually gave me the strength to decline, and it is about what other people's behavior actually is. The second understanding came years later, and it changed how I see every difficult person on this earth. Here it is. Almost nothing that people do is about you. I know you have heard some version of this before, the modern books say it too, but hear the old way of it, because the old way goes deeper. My grandmother taught it with the dogs. She said, "When a dog that has been beaten snaps at your kind hand, what has the dog told you? Has it told you about your hand, or has it told you about its history?" Every creature, she said, and this includes every person you will ever meet, behaves out of what it carries. The snapping is the history speaking. The rudeness of the man at the counter is his mourning speaking, his marriage speaking, his pain speaking, and you simply happen to be standing in front of the speaker when it played. The relative who diminishes you at gatherings is not describing you. She is describing her own unlived life out loud, in the only language her wounds permit, comparison. The friend who grew cold is not reporting on your worth. He is reporting on his own season. My grandmother said, people are always telling you about themselves, always, every hour, in everything they do. They are almost never telling you about you. They do not know enough about you to tell you about you, and once this understanding settles into a person, truly settles, the whole world changes shape. The insult arrives, and where you used to hear a verdict about yourself, you now hear an autobiography. His, not yours. And you cannot be wounded by another man's autobiography. You can only be informed by it. I began in those middle years to receive people's worst behavior the way you receive weather reports from a country you do not live in. Interesting, noted, sometimes even sad, storms over there again, poor man. But not mine. Nothing that touches my house. The bothered man believes every behavior is a message addressed to him. The unbothered man has finally read the envelope, and the envelope, 9 times out of 10, was never addressed to him at all. It was addressed to someone from the sender's past, and he is only the nearest mailbox. Let me give you the moment this understanding proved itself in my own family, because family is where it is hardest and where it pays the most. There was a relative of mine, I will not say which, who for years had a gift for the small, cutting remark. At every gathering, a little blade slipped in with the potatoes. Nice of you to finally visit. I see you're still doing that hair. That kind of blade, small, deniable, expert. And for years I bled on schedule every holiday right on time and rehearsed responses all the drive home while my wife watched the road and let me burn. And then came the year the second understanding had finally settled in me, and at that gathering the blade came out as usual and something new happened. I heard it differently. I heard, for the first time, not a verdict about me, but a report about her. And I looked at this relative, actually looked, past the remark, and I saw what I had been too busy bleeding to see for 20 years. A woman disappointed in ways she could never say out loud. A life that had narrowed while she watched other lives widen. The blades were not weapons aimed at me. They were pressure escaping a sealed pot, and they hissed at whoever sat closest. And in that moment, hear this, the strangest thing occurred. I did not feel cut. I felt sad for her, a clean sadness, almost tender. And I answered her little blade with something gentle, some easy kindness about the meal. And I watched confusion cross her face like weather, because the game requires a bleeding partner, and I had left the table without leaving my chair. She cut less after that year. Not never. Less. Sealed pots hiss less at people who refuse to be scalded. But whether she had changed or not no longer governed anything, because I had stopped being the mailbox for letters written to her own life long before I was born into it. And the third understanding is the deepest, and it is the one that finished the work, and I will tell you the day it arrived. It arrived at a funeral. I was in my 50s, burying a man of my parents' generation, a good man, and I sat in the back and I watched, and somewhere in that hour a question walked into me and never left. I looked at that box and I thought, what bothered him? In his 79 years, what bothered this man? And I realized I knew some of it, everyone knew. He had feuded 15 years with a brother-in-law over a fence line, and carried public grudges, and been famous for his tempers over small offenses. And every bit of it, every fury, every feud, every offended season of that man's one life, was going into the ground with him that afternoon, weightless now, meaningless now, resolved by the great resolver, and the fence still stood exactly where it stood. And I sat in the back of that gathering and did the most useful arithmetic of my life. I counted what had bothered me that same month: the driver, the comment from a cousin, a repairman who overcharged me, a slight at a meeting, and I asked the funeral question of each one. Will this be worth anything at the box? Will any of this matter in the counting of my days? And the answer for every single item was so plainly no that I nearly laughed out loud in the back row. And then the question turned around, as the deep questions always do, and it asked me, then what will matter at the box? And the answers to that were so few and so clear, the people I love and how I loved them, the peace I kept or failed to keep, what I passed down, whether I was present for my own life or spent it attending the invitations of fools. 4 or 5 things. That is the whole list. And everything that had ever bothered me, all of it, the entire 50-year catalog, fell outside the list. Since that afternoon I have carried the funeral question everywhere, and I hand it to you now, because it is the fastest medicine I own. When something begins to bother you, ask it plainly. Will this matter at the box? Not at the end of the week, at the box. And watch what happens, because 99 of every 100 bothers held up to that light dissolve while you are still holding them. They cannot survive the question. They were never real enough to survive it. They were only ever urgent, and urgent, my friend, is the great impostor of important. The box knows the difference. Ask the box. And I want to add what happened when I began living by the funeral question, because there was an effect I did not expect. I expected it to shrink my angers, and it did. It starved them, one by one. What I did not expect is what grew in the cleared ground. When 99 of the 100 bothers dissolved, the one that remained, the rare true one, finally got my full attention. Because there are things that should bother a person. Hear me. This teaching has never been about caring for nothing. Cruelty to the weak should bother you. A wrong done to your family that you can actually right should move you to right it. The unbothered man is not the man who shrugs at everything. He is the man whose bothering has been purified, concentrated, aimed. In my burning years, my outrage was spent daily, spread across 100 trivial fires, drivers and comments and fence lines, and when something came along that deserved a stand, I had nothing left to stand with. I was ash by Tuesday. Now my capacity to care sits whole, rested, undivided, and on the rare day something real requires it. All of it arrives at once, and people who have only ever seen me calm are startled at what shows up. That is the hidden gift of the funeral question. It does not make you passive, it makes you precise. A man bothered by everything defends nothing well. A man bothered by almost nothing defends the few real things with everything he has. Now, before I close, the warning I promised, because there is a false version of this teaching and it will ruin you if you take the wrong road. There is a way of being unbothered that is really being unreachable. The man who goes numb, who armors over, cares less, loves less, lets nothing in so nothing can hurt, and calls his deadness peace. That is not what I built, and it is not what I am teaching. Hear the difference, because from the outside they can look alike. The numb man feels nothing. The unbothered man feels everything, and is moved only by what deserves to move him. I cry more easily at 70 than I did at 40. I have told you that before. Beauty gets all the way in now. Grief gets all the way in. Love, gratitude, the grandchildren, the morning light, the old songs, they all reach me deeper than ever, because the door of my chest stands wide open. What changed is the guard at the door. The guard finally learned the difference between guests and thieves. Beauty is a guest. Grief for the beloved is a guest, an honored one. The stranger's rudeness is a thief. The cousin's comment is a thief. The old grudge is a thief that has been robbing the same house for 30 years. The guard admits every guest and turns away every thief, and that exactly is the calm people ask me about. Not an empty house, a well-guarded full one. So do not go numb on me. Numb is surrender wearing pieces clothing. Go open and guarded at once, feeling everything true, declining everything false. And here is how you begin, tomorrow, with the smallest of steps. One invitation. Just one. Tomorrow, something small will invite you, the driver, the comment, the delay, and you will feel the old hand reaching to carry the words from ear to chest. And this one time, just once, see it, name it. There is the invitation, and set it down and walk on and notice, an hour later, that the fire never got lit and the evening was yours and the sky did not fall. That is one declined invitation. That is how I started. 50 years ago, one invitation at a time, an angry young man in his grandfather's yard began declining and became the old man you are watching, whom nothing bothers and whom everything true still touches. The road is the same road for you. It is shorter than mine because I have just handed you the map. Decline one tomorrow, then keep declining. The stillness you are asking me about is at the end of that road, and it is real, and I am living in it, and I will tell you the best part. There is room in here for everyone. If what you heard today stayed with you, the book is there. The Native Way, 20 teachings, 100 pages, written the way I would speak to you if we were sitting together. Scan the QR code on the screen with your phone or find the link in the comments. Read one chapter, sit with it. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what is the invitation you accept most often, and will you decline it tomorrow? I read every comment, and if this is the kind of conversation you have been looking for, subscribe to this channel. We are not collecting viewers here, we are collecting people who remember. Come back next week, I am not done teaching yet.